So I'm here to address a couple of concerns that I have found on a channel dedicated completely to me. And there's been a few over the years. I had some conversations with Mormons back in 2007 about their doctrine and about their history. I made no, you know, illusion that I was anti-Mormon. I was absolutely anti-Mormon, but I had some great Mormon people, scholars, that came to my channel and we had productive conversations. There was no insult fest. There was no, little out of the side of your mouth kind of comments or any of that. I mean, they were intellectually mature and they had great points. And then a couple of times we'd go back and forth. They'd make a video on their channel. They would respond to some of my comments. I'd make a video on my channel. I would respond to their comments. It would go back and forth, and it was, very peaceful and productive. That's what I like, is productive conversations. You can see that I've got a channel on YouTube called SLU2COM. So with, mature people and with intellectually honest people, I have great debates, and I have for a very long time. Those debates for Mormonism went on for about 3, maybe 4 years. And then, I got busy. I ended up with 2 businesses, 2 retail stores, and I was working sometimes 96 hours a week as a robotics engineer. So for roughly, 6 to 10 years of my life, I just couldn't, I couldn't maintain that conversation. And I would love to get back into it. I think that's being that Mormons, are the most wealthy religion and the second largest religion in the United States, I think that's a worthy conversation. Similarly, people like Sam Harris, with atheism, even, other atheists that are like comedian Penn Jillette. Those people have, intellectual and honest points. They're not just trying to troll people. They're not just trying to, make an inflammatory statement so that you'll respond. They want to have a conversation. So I like that. And I've had a long history of that ever since 1999, which is about 3 years before I met my wife. We started having these Well, when I was a kid, we actually had these conversations on bulletin board systems. So when I was 12, 13, 14, even 15, before I moved out of my parents' house, I moved to other states and traveled a bit. When I had electricity and a computer, we had these bulletin board systems that I would get on with my Amiga or my Commodore, and we'd have these same conversations. So I have a history of this debate. It's not that I was 13, 14, 15. It's not that I was claiming to be some sort of scholar or educated. I just wanted to, discuss the topics, right? It wasn't about, it's my opinion and my opinion matters more for whatever reason. No, that's not it. It's just that I like to have these debates. So I get this new troll, right? It's not even a new troll. He's been, trolling me since I met my wife. The guy, first of all, he went to college, but I don't think he got a degree. And if he did get a degree, he's certainly not utilizing it because he doesn't work. I know multiple of his, acquaintances and friends, and basically he lives with his mom. He plays video games all day. He dates girls till they get sick of him, and then they have a fight. Usually the cops get called, and he starts his snitching process. But he's my in-law, so that he made a channel for me. Oh, wow. I'm flattered. I think that's at least a good starting point. So I wanted to address some of the claims that he's talking about. Now, he wants to argue that there's probably 10 points that he likes to argue on. There's atheism. That's his big thing. Atheism versus Christianity. There's abortion versus defending the right of life, human life. There is vaccinations versus anti-vax. There is, what else does he argue? Abiogenesis versus creation. Gun rights. That's kind of an iffy topic. He goes back and forth on that one. I think it's because he ended up losing his gun rights after many aggravated assaults and other criminal record issues. I don't think he can actually own a gun anymore. So now he's kind of on the fence there. He's like, if he finds somebody that's pro-gun and he wants to argue with them, he'll use the liberal talking points that are anti-gun talking points. But that wasn't the same as when he had the right to own a gun. You know, he was raised with weapons. His wife, my wife, his sister and my wife, you know, were raised hunting and fishing and, you know, in a house full of weapons. So if he wants to argue, you know, to make somebody, to inflame a conversation, if he wants to, what they call on the internet, flame a conversation, you know, he'll use these liberal talking points to enrage somebody. And I've seen it all over. He uses all these fake accounts and he does this all the time. So as far as like the abortion thing, the right to life thing, you know, when it comes to a woman should have the right to do what she wants with her own body, that nobody should be able to take that right away. I agree. You know, a woman wants to get her tubes tied, let her get her tubes tied. A woman wants to, you know, use birth control, let her use birth control. A woman wants to, I don't know, amputate her arm, that's fine with me. But when you're talking about another life with a heartbeat, you know, that's different, because it's like when a person is declared dead, it's because they have no heartbeat, right? When a person is considered alive, well, it's because they have a heartbeat. So, you know, at roughly 5 to 6 weeks, a baby is, you know, has a living heart that's beating inside of its chest, and it's a separate body. You know, a woman doesn't have 4 arms and 4 legs and 2 hearts and 2 brains unless she's some sort of a medical anomaly. So a woman has the right to do what she wants with her own body, but she does not have the right to kill another person, in my opinion. I mean, you know, as far as murder is concerned, as in the definition of murder, I don't think that that should be a right. Now, I'll never give up on that point, so you can continue to argue that point, and other people will for time and eternity, but I want to see Roe versus Wade completely nullified. And that's the end of that, because I believe in protecting humanity. It's a slippery slope when you say, well, all of these people over here matter, so we need to give them free health care and free education and free this and free that. They matter. We have to protect them. We have to serve them. We have to take, you know, extraordinary means to make them comfortable. But these people over here don't matter very much because they're too small, or they're, you know, not quite as healthy, or they're not quite as strong. So those don't matter as much, but these people over here do. You know, the weakest among us, the unborn babies, they don't matter. You know, they've never done anything to anybody. You know, they're not guilty of any kind of harm or malice whatsoever to anybody, ever. But they don't matter. Nah, they're too weak and young, you know. But these people over here who have all kinds of issues, who probably have all kinds of malice and other things in their life, you know, I mean, pretty much every human does, right? Everybody's done somebody wrong, or at some point has done something that may not be acceptable to other people. But they're worth protecting. It's just the innocent unborn, they're not worth protecting. That's a slippery slope. That's like the Nazis. They got into eugenics. They started, you know, deciding which unborn babies were valid and which weren't, you know, and which humans were valid and which weren't. You know, they started with the whole, you know, eugenics thing, and then they moved on to gassing Jews. I mean, it's just like Venezuela. You know, oh, we can talk about those gun rights right now because this fits right into the situation that I'm talking about. In gun rights, look at Venezuela. They started taking away guns, and now you can look at what's going on in the streets. You've got military vehicles running over protesters, and the people have, you know, their guns restricted, and many of them have given up their guns. Now they can't even fight back against their government. You know, this is my biggest problem when it comes to these arguments. And I know this guy is just trolling me. Like, he doesn't really care about the answer. He doesn't really care about the debate. But this is a bigger, you know, issue that I'd love to discuss with other people. And you know, it just fits into the whole topic of liberty versus tyranny. So, you know, when, you know, all of these socialist countries come to power and they push a socialist system, you know, they start reducing rights. And then they become more and more powerful. And then when they get so powerful, they start destroying the lives of the people that they are watching over. So it's the fox in the hen house, right? And the hens are disarmed. They don't have any way to defend themselves. That's my biggest problem with gun rights. That's why I protested for Lavoy Finicum when they shot him, saying, oh, he had a gun, we had to kill him, you know, or whatever. Like, he didn't threaten anybody, but they had to kill him because he had a gun. So I went down with my rifle to the main state house, loaded, you know, and I spoke to the police and, shook their hands and walked away. We didn't have a problem. They understood what I was doing. They believe, some police, many police believe in gun rights, believe in the Second Amendment, believe in the First Amendment, right? And that was a good demonstration of, why you should exercise your rights so you don't lose your rights. But my biggest thing is, if we don't push back, then the government will do what Venezuela did, do what the National Socialist in Germany did, or the communist in Russia, or in Cuba. Fidel Castro and Che Guevara's, especially Che Guevara's, everybody's wearing his shirts, Madonna, all these idiot liberals. He used to go over and kill gays in South American countries, specifically Cuba. But when they were fighting in the Congo, and Che Guevara was part of that faction of, liberators or whatever they call themselves, they were killing blacks. And, you read his book that he wrote, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but the diaries that were recently published that, he wrote during his time in the Congo, he hated blacks, he hated gays. But all of these liberals are wearing his shirt as some sort of liberator for socialism. All socialism is a way to control people, and then eventually, as it usually works out, a way to kill people in mass amounts. So I don't agree with these, tyrannical, overbearing government policies, and that's why I push back on them. I've done it long before I met this little troll fella. Ever since I was like 13 or 14, I've been resisting, these tyrannical laws. I've been a protester, I've been an activist for long before I met my wife, long before I became an adult. I've always, like, when I was a kid, I would get busted for weed. And I'd go to jail. I'd spend a couple weeks before I bail out. I'd find somebody to help me get bailed out. And one time, I was in Provo, Utah, and I got bailed out of Utah County Jail, and I went down to get my stuff from the police evidence room, and in the brim of my hat, I had a joint. And I put my hat on, and I felt the little bump in there. I was like, oh, I got the joint. Pulled it out right down Center Street in Provo, a block away from the police station. I lit it up, and I smoked it all the way down the street. That's immediately after getting out of jail and spending thousands of dollars on bail and attorneys and everything else. And in protest, just in defiance of the law, I smoked that joint all the way down the street to Pioneer Park in Provo. And that's just who I am. That was, I was still a teenager. I must have been 18 or 19 at that point. And so I've protested ever since. I've constantly went, and challenged the police, challenged the courts. I went to drug court in Idaho Falls, protesting the drug laws with big signs. I had police kind of, scoping me out, not really engaging me, but driving past multiple times to see if I was doing anything illegal, I guess. But anyway, I've done it. You can see on my ex-cannabis channel all of the protests that I've done all of my life as an adult anyway. And it's because I want my kids to live in a free world. So it's like vaccines. That's another thing we can get into. Vaccines. Now, I am not 100% against vaccines. I just know thimerosal, or thimerosal, the preservative that contains mercury, is in levels of over the CDC recommended amount for dangerous levels in these vaccines as preservatives. Now, for me, injecting a 5-day-old, 10-day-old, 3-month-old, whatever, age that they're getting these at, they're just young and they're fragile babies, injecting them with a poison that the CDC says can cause brain damage, can cause brain swelling, can cause immune system issues. First of all, the thimerosal, and then second of all, you're injecting a kid with diseases. I don't think that should be forced. If parents want to, destroy their kids' immune system, maybe give them some brain damage at these young ages, I think it's questionable, but I don't think it should be mandated. That's my only resistance. I insisted on getting our kids vaccinated when Constance was first born. Kimmy, my wife, resisted quite a bit, but I insisted she got the basic round of vaccines. Now that I've learned more about vaccines, we are intending, and we're world travelers, so I'm intending to get my other kids, vaccinated with non-preservative vaccines. So this is a good topic to talk about, to show that there's other ways of doing this. You don't have to get those standard preservative-filled, chemically filled vaccines. you can get these non-preservative vaccines that don't contain the list of like 40 different terrible chemicals. So, and that leads me to, the atheist versus Christian thing. If someone accused me of, oh, you're not a Christian, you don't act like a Christian, I'd be like, yeah, well, I'm not a Christian. I mean, not in that sense of the word. I don't have a church. What church do I belong to? Nobody knows, because I don't belong to a church. I've never joined a church. My parents forced me to get baptized as a Mormon when I was 8. I had no choice. It was either that or get my ass kicked. And I fought like hell. And, my grandpa set me down. I had long rocker hair. I was 8, and, I was into like AC/DC and Ozzy Osbourne, Black Sabbath, and all this. And, my grandpa set me down, chopped my hair. Didn't do a very good job. He just, held me. I had to sit there. I had no choice. And so I joined the Mormon church, I guess. I never held a calling. I never went through all of the procedures to, get a priesthood title or any of that stuff. It just never meant anything to me. And age 19, I wrote was it 20, maybe 19 or 20? I wrote the LDS Church records department and my bishop, and I had my name removed from the Mormon records. I never got rebaptized to another church or anything like that. When I did find a relationship with Christ, I had a guy named Pastor Gene Short baptized me in the Provo River. I never joined his church. I never joined any other church. And ever since, I've never joined a church. So I don't feel like I'm a Christian in the sense that I belong to a group. I feel like I'm a disciple of Jesus. I like to learn from his wisdom. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying that I execute his teachings perfect. I'm just saying that it makes a lot of sense. He did really good. He wasn't always peaceful either. He wasn't always just peace pop microdot Jesus guy. He sometimes whipped the money changers at the temple. He sometimes used crass language. He called the Pharisees snake shit. So I don't feel like I'm too far away from the teachings of Jesus. I don't feel like I'm righteous like Jesus was, but I feel like, I'm on my path, and it's my path, not anybody else's path. And I'm, doing my own thing and not a group thing. So yeah, say that I'm not a Christian. That's fine with me. I mean, I am what I am. I'm more Gnostic, meaning that I pursue the knowledge of the spiritual realm, and other things. I like to pursue knowledge, period. Let's get through something that he said recently. So because I've constantly waged a war on prescription drug, over prescribing prescription drugs, because my brother killed himself on prescription drugs when he was 16, my brother was one of my best friends. I posted his website, justin-thompson.com, all throughout his life. We got pictures of me and him hugging, hanging out, riding horses, traveling. Like a week before he died was his birthday. It's me and him sitting next to each other, nobody else, me and him, while he's blowing out his candles, and I'm hugging him and he's blowing his candles out. That was like a week before he died. But my troll friend here, this little punk ass that lives at home with his mommy, keeps claiming that, first he said my brother was gay. He wasn't. And then he said that I shamed him for being gay. I didn't. And he said that I was responsible for him dying. I wasn't. My little brother and I had no conflicts. We would argue about music. We would have little discussions, heated discussions, like every sibling. But we never had a major conflict. That never happened. And the moment he died, we had been going to music festivals, a Christian music festival in Vernal with that Pastor Gene Short. He was there. And up in Salt Lake at the Main Street Coffee House, Pastor Clint Roberts, just like a week and a half before my brother died, me and him were just hanging out all the time. And there's tons of witnesses, talking about, we could, I don't know if we'll have them on or not, but it's just that this guy, this troll friend, I guess, this in-law, he likes to make statements that enrage people so that they'll respond, and then he can go tell his mommy, because he lives with his mommy, Look what they're doing. They're saying mean things to me. I can never do anything. If they keep doing this to me, I can never do anything. They always say mean things. This is his, ploy for getting sympathy from his mom. Tell his mom, I can't work because people are saying mean things about me on the internet. I can't work because people know who I am because, all these people say mean things. Well, I'm not the only one, dude. I mean, this guy has a criminal record a mile long where he's called the police on people with false accusations. This is on his record. This is a public record. Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, vandalizing, theft, all these other things. So if he can't get a job, it's not my fault. All somebody has to do is pull up his criminal background, which most employers do. And when they see all this crap, like 3 or 4 pages of just insane stuff, why would you hire somebody like that? It has nothing to do with me. But let's see, what else was there? Gosh, I can't even think. But as far as like snitching, and I found on his record, speaking of his record, that he's got multiple cases sealed. And then before that, he's, given false information to police officers. And then multiple times, and I've proven on other videos that he's called the police on me for no reason whatsoever. We could be 3,500 miles away from him, like when we were in Maine, and then we have police showing up at my door saying my brother in Idaho called the police on me. And then we have a chuckle and the police laugh, and then I post a video about it. The thing with snitches is that there's no honor in that whatsoever. Because you want somebody else to fight your battle for you, because you want to call the cops to harass somebody, like this swatting thing. This is the one reason why I respond to these things, especially when it comes to snitching, is that, what if when he called the cops on me in Maine and he told them that I was some sort of a threat, the cops came in with guns and flashbangs and grenades and stuff and, hurt my kids, I mean, I want to make this known that if, the cops are called on me again in one of these swatting incidents, they're never going to find anything in my house. I don't do anything illegal, I mean, I have a medical marijuana card, and if they ever found marijuana, there would be no illegal activity because it's not illegal for me. That's why I don't live in Utah, or that's why I don't live in Idaho, or in any of these places where marijuana is illegal, is because, I have kids. I don't want my kids to have their life interrupted. I don't want them to have any negative consequences for my medicine. If it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for my kids, I wouldn't care where I lived. I could live in Utah, I could live in Idaho, I could live anywhere. These are my cards. I've got them from multiple states. Let's see, where's another one? I've got them from Maine, Colorado, California, and Washington. But if the little punk ass bitch that calls the cops on everybody called the cops on me again, and I got swatted by the police, because he made up some bullshit information about me, what would happen? I might lose a kid. I might lose my own life. I might have my house destroyed. I mean, and this has been an issue with us where this little punk ass snitch calls the police on me and other people as well. I'm not the only one. This is a regular thing on his record. He has 3 counts of giving false information to police about one of his rivals. Usually it's an ex-girlfriend, but sometimes it's me as well. So when he made this whole channel and he started making videos about me and he started saying all these things, and he uses my real name so that when somebody types in my name on the internet, they'll find his channel and they'll find all of his lies about me, which is fine. Do a background check on me. I haven't had a criminal criminal conviction since I was a teenager. And that was only for pot. Since I've been an adult, since I've been 20 plus, so 23 years, I have protested. I have been arrested for protesting. Like once I got arrested for using the streets without a permit. But when I challenged the law, I hired an attorney from the ACLU and I paid him. It wasn't pro bono. I paid this guy, and I hired a guy from Pleasant Grove on the same case. So I hired 2 attorneys. All of my charges were dropped. But not only that, I was arrested on June 10th, 2010. On July 20th, 2010, the City Council of Springville, where I got arrested, actually nullified the law that required a person to get a permit to use their free speech because it violates the First Amendment. They had to do that or they would have been sued. I mean, if they wouldn't have changed their law, I would have filed a lawsuit against them and I would have won. But every time I've been arrested or had a ticket or anything like that for anything since I was 20 years old, I beat the charges easily because the police will use their, lack of knowledge of the law or their ignorance of the law to punish somebody for a victimless crime, like protesting. And, it's easy to beat. It's just they want to interrupt your protest. They want to stifle your free speech. So when they do that to me, I have to spend thousands of dollars on a lawyer and I have to go and fight things and I have to, spend my time and energy on it. But I always win, and I always will win because I'm not a criminal. I'm not into criminal activity. But I am against ignorant police that enforce laws that are non-applicable or that are tyrannical. If it's tyranny, if it's anti-liberty, if it's a victimless crime, I'm going to protest it. I'm going to push back. That's what I do. So yeah, if you want to have that debate, that's fine. But I don't think your knowledge or your experience trumps mine. I mean, a person who's never had a professional position, who's basically done labor, sparingly throughout the, 37 years of your life, who went to school for 10 years, went to college and paid, an astronomical amount of money, and didn't even get a degree. I mean, the fact that you even needed that, to go to college shows that, you have these weaknesses, that you feel insecure about your own knowledge, about your own worth. And what did it do for you? After going through all of that, spending all that money, and all that time, did you ever get a degree out of it? No. So, I don't feel like, your lack of knowledge trumps my lack of knowledge. I'm not saying I'm all knowledgeable, but I would never say that you have more knowledge than I do. And if you do, prove it. What have you done? Have you changed a law? Have you worked for a good company that's changed the world? Like, I was a robotics engineer for a long time, and the company I worked for did medical dispensing. And so what we did was we had a per dose dispensing system that would dispense each dose of medicine for each patient. So if they had 3 pills for, one time of day, the dispenser would just print out and dispense in a little package that pill, or that round of pills, but they wouldn't have to get a blister pack when they entered the hospital like they usually do. So like when a patient enters the hospital and they have medication, they'll issue 30 days worth of meds. They'll give them a blister pack, with all of the little pills in the little aluminum sealed, blister pack thing. And when they are discharged, even if it's a day later or an hour later, they'll throw away everything that wasn't used in that blister pack, which costs patients exorbitant amounts of money. So when I worked for that company, during the time that I worked for them, we saved the 710 facilities that we serviced, big hospitals like Mayo Clinic, Cancer Centers of America, all that. We saved patients in hospitals $55 billion in medical waste. What have you done? Have you changed any laws? Have you saved anybody money? Have you done anything nice for anybody? When we were in Hurricane Maria, I gave away about $80,000 of stuff that I had saved from my retirement. I gave away my boat, gave away my tools, gave away my truck. No strings attached. I gave it to people that I loved and cared about. They don't owe me nothing. I gave it to them. Have you helped anybody? What have you done in your life? You haven't done shit. And if you have, well, do that instead of harassing me and other people. That's what I say. Peace.